parents had two dreams for me. My mom dreamed that I would be born with straight hair. I don't have straight hair, this is all chemically induced. My dad's dream for me was that I would grow up to be a pharmacist. You see, pharmacy ran in our family. My dad's a pharmacist, my sister's a pharmacist, my aunt, my uncle's a pharmacist. But on the night before the pharmacy application was due, I did the one rebellious act I had ever done since trying to wear eyeliner in grade 7. I didn't hand in my pharmacy application. I told my dad, "Dad, I've fallen in love with something else." He said, "What have you fallen in love with? Tell me." I said, "Dad, I've fallen in love with step aerobics." You see, I grew up, I didn't play hockey or soccer or any of those group sports, but when I went to my first step aerobics class, I don't know if it was the leggings or the jazzercise music, something came over me. In fact, I was so struck by this that I actually started taking night school when I was 16 and 17 to become a group fitness instructor. So I told my dad that in fact I wanted to pursue kinesiology, or human kinetics as it was called at the time. And the only image that conjured for my dad was this. This is who you're going to be spending your time with? You're just going to be working out at the gym all the time? And I said, "No, Dad, this is who I actually want to become." My mom took one look at that, said, "Curly hair, not good enough." So I took the very scenic route to medicine. Medicine wasn't something I dreamt of doing, it just happened to fit in the cards, right place at the right time. But what was so interesting, I show this slide on purpose often as my opening slide. I'm a physician, I've been practicing for over 12 years. I'm a mother of 3 young boys, aged 6, 8, and 10, and I'm a speaker. I've traveled the world, actually, speaking about the thing that I'm so passionate about, which is mental and emotional health, but yet those titles taught me very little. In fact, the title that you see there, patient, taught me the most. I gave my first TEDx talk in 2019 here in Abbotsford, actually. And it was on that stage that I called myself a hypocrite. Because I was. You see, I would diagnose you and treat you and advocate for you and counsel you all day long for your mental health. But when it came to me, too good. It's so interesting, certain professions you think bolster you against mental and emotional health. But for me, all I found was that medicine made me more brittle. And it was being a patient and going through postpartum depression and OCD and anxiety and suicidality that I started to see a very different side of mental health. For those of you who know the Foundry, that's where I'm medical director, and I've served there for the past 10 years. The name Foundry means many different things to many different people, but when you show that name to the youth we serve between the ages of 12 and 24, they say, "I feel seen, I feel heard, I feel found." And ironically, that's what the Foundry did for me. It's not just that, it allowed me to think differently about medicine, because in medicine, they talk about the science and the art of medicine. We are so worried about diagnosing people and prescribing and getting it right that we often forget about the art of medicine. And this is what I try to teach the learners, the medical students and residents that I teach every shift I'm on there. What I've come to realize over the decade of working at the Foundry is that youth and adolescents that I see want two things that seem to be in polar opposition. The first thing they want is to feel unique. They want to feel like their story is their own. I often tell my youth that you are unique as a snowflake. You really are. But at the same time, the paradox of it all is that they want to feel universal. They don't want to feel alone. They want to feel connected. They want to feel, "Can you help me? Have you seen this before?" That's a question I often get. And what was so interesting is I didn't know how to wrangle with this idea of trying to make an adolescent feel both unique and universal until I met a patient a few years ago. Her name was Leah, and she was a 17-year-old female, and she'd come to see me because of her mood. It was one of those appointments where her eyes were downcast. She didn't make any eye contact with me. When I asked her to tell me more about her story, silence is all that I got. The little I could see in the notes was that she was struggling with school, struggling with relationships, struggling with friendships. Things were just not going well for her. So I did something I usually don't do. And I asked her, I said, Leah, tell me one thing that's going well. Even one thing that you like about yourself. And she looked up at me and made eye contact for the first time. And her reply changed my world. She said, I love my eyebrows. It's a true story. She actually said, I really like my left eyebrow, but my right eyebrow is okay as well. So I did the only thing I could do at that moment. I said, tell me more. So she went on to tell me between plucking and tweezing and brow shadow and all the other things that she loved, she learned that she loved makeup. So this was a moment where I could have just blown past that and say, okay, you love makeup, but let's talk about your anxiety and depression, but I didn't. I paused and I said, teach me all that you know. So for the next 5 minutes, she went on to tell me about how to make your eyelids glossy and your lip blurred and how the no makeup trend actually involves makeup. Who knew? She taught me all of these things because in that moment, she didn't need a clinician. She didn't need a doctor. She didn't need a counselor. What she needed was not to be coached. She needed to be the coach. That was the turning point. It was this idea of flipping the script, where the student becomes a teacher and the teacher becomes the student. And this would only work because adolescents are very perceptive. You need to be honest in your reactions. They can sniff when you're not genuine, a mile away. So I leaned in. I actually leaned in and actually said, tell me more. I led with that idea of curiosity more than anything. So often when we talk about mental health with adolescents, we ask them to self-reflect and look inward, and oftentimes that can be a deep and dark and ugly place to look into. But when I asked her to be the coach, when I asked her to teach me something as benign as the makeup trick she was using, that was her time to look up. That was her time to shift from someone that needed help to someone who could help someone else. That was her time to say that her identity was not all about struggle. Her identity was more than that. And in this time period, since using this technique, that it really didn't even crystallize what I was doing until writing this TED Talk. I've learned more about fashion and makeup and video games and social media than I could have ever asked for. I've learned about what puts the snap in Snapchat and the pop in K-pop. And I've learned what Delulu actually means. I can tell you about that later too. And I learned this idea of when you make the adolescent the expert, especially in a role where there already is a hierarchy, magic happens. And this magic happens in 3 forms. It gives the adolescents competence. I know something. My identity is beyond the anxiety and the depression that we're here to talk about. It makes them feel connected. It makes them feel like they're contributing to something greater. So often as a doctor, if I took each and every one of you and I put you into my clinic room and I listened to you, what we spent our decades of training is to figure people out, like trying to unscramble the enigma of a Rubik's Cube. And when I realized that sometimes adolescents don't want to be figured out, they just want to be fascinating. They want to be fascinating to you, and through that fascination, through teaching me something, ultimately they feel like they matter. But this arrow of coaching doesn't just go in one direction. Sometimes me as a clinician, me as a counselor, me as a doctor also needs to be their coach. And I learned this lesson when I saw 15-year-old Christina in the clinic. Now you see, 15-year-old Christina was making some very inappropriate type of decisions that might come to her future avail, whether it be through her physical health, her mental health, her emotional health. There was even some legal issues that were happening. So I'm hearing all of this happen, hearing her tell me all of this stuff, and out of the corner of my eye, I see a spider. Now this might not be pertinent to you, but it's very pertinent to me because I am terrified of spiders. So here Christina is opening up her heart and soul and telling me all these things, but can I listen to her? Not at all. Because all I see in the corner of her room is this beefy looking spider. So Christina follows my gaze and says, do you want me to get rid of that for you? Yes, of course I want you to get rid of that for me. So I hand her a Kleenex. She looks at me, points her finger directly in my face and says, Dr. Alibhai, I don't kill things. Give me a cup. All right, judge me if you wouldn't. I wouldn't have minded if beefy Charlotte, the spider, would have met its death there. You can judge me all you want. So I got the cup and off Christina went and the spider went off freely. So when Christina came back to me, I said, I have to ask. Here you are telling me about some of the decisions that you are making that could be a risk to your future physical and mental health, and yet you won't kill a spider? Please reconcile that for me. So she looked at me and said, I love animals. In fact, she loved animals so much that she recently became a vegan, and her goal was to become a veterinary assistant. And that's when it clicked. And I looked at Christina and I told her, I said, you keep up with some of these decisions, your goal of serving and loving and caring for animals might be in jeopardy. I can tell that you value animals so much and your passion and care means so much. But think about the decisions you are making. I am so proud to see from that day forward, every single appointment I saw a shift in her behavior. Because what I did and what all of us do as parents, as teachers, as coaches, as clinicians, our job is to put a spotlight, just like this, a spotlight on our adolescents' value systems. What do they hold to be true? We often think that values are just some things that fuel me, something that actually I love or I'm passionate about, but that's not the way I've seen it work in adolescence. The way that I've seen it work in adolescence is that they get fired up. In adolescent language, it's something that pisses them off. And it's our job, it's my job as a clinician, now I say a coach, to say, why did it do that? What is underneath that emotion that's pointing to you towards what is significance to you? You know, Dr. Lisa D'Amour, a New York Times bestselling psychologist, will often say adolescence is a time of trying on many cloaks of values and cloaks of identities. And we see that as we go through this time period. But it's up to us as the coach to shine a spotlight on what really matters to them, and dare I say, what an adolescent would sacrifice for. So it's this bi-directional arrow of coaching. The youth is the coaching to the physician, and the physician as the coach to the student, to the patient, that allows them to do three things: to feel competent, to feel like they contribute, to feel like they are connected. I don't know about many of you, but I remember even as a little girl playing with these vibrant, multicolored parachutes. And maybe you were lucky enough to have the balls on the top of it, and the balls almost acting like popcorn kernels to see who could throw the balls the highest. Those balls and the outstretched parachute remind me a lot of adolescence, a time that can feel so frenzied, so tumultuous, and even so heavy at times. But it's everyone sitting here today, the teachers, the parents, the fellow students, the coaches, the clinicians, we are the ones holding the rungs of that parachute to form a taut yet billowy surface to catch you when you fall. And not only that, our job is not just to manage the chaos, but through looking at the idea that adolescents belong here, they matter here, and they have the ability to coach and teach us so much more, we can turn that momentum into something so much greater and lift adolescents to heights they had never dreamed of before. Thank you.